I was a proper YouTuber at this point. I'd slap a big title on the video like, don't buy this bike. You know, all that clickbait rubbish. I'm not going to do that to you though. But what I am going to say is...
Hey up, I'm Guy Kestevan, the Tester Man. And this is the Whyte T-140 RS. The latest meat-powered mid-travel mountain bike from the UK brand. But how does it compare to other reasonably priced rides in this travel category from other UK brands? What's the little white lie that Whyte are telling us about this bike? And ultimately, is this a bike I'd recommend? Let's hit the trails and find out.
So, first thing to talk about is that little white lie. And that is the, although Whyte are calling this bike T140, travel is actually generously stated as 135. I've actually measured it a little bit less than that. So, compared to other bike naming conventions, they're being a little bit cheeky there. But it's a 140mm fork up front, and it's a bike that very much lives in that mid-travel trail category. And in terms of other numbers, this large on testing has a 483mm reach and 65.3 degree head angle, a standard 76-degree seat angle, 338mm bottom bracket height, 435mm chainstay length, and then 450mm seat tube length. So, kind of classic mid-travel bike numbers, really. However, with this alloy frame, weighs in 15.6 kilos. So, it's not a particularly light vehicle. Pretty much the same weight as the bikes I've tested from Voodoo and Caliber at half the price. This currently retails at £3,000 or £299.99 if you want to be picky. And if you look at the frame, that might come as something of a surprise, because the frame tubes, certainly on the main frame, are pretty slim. And you've got this little strake on the side there, to use nautical terms, to stiffen things up. But it's definitely not a big, chunky bottom bracket vibe. However, on the back end, while you haven't got any braces across the seat stays, you have got very chunky stays, plus a really big linkage driving that rear shock. So, while some firms, like Canyon, have kind of deliberately gone for a stiffer front end and then a more pliable, playful back end, seems like Whyte have done the opposite with this T140 RS. It's actually quite a fluid, flowing front end and then a chunkier, punchier back end. And that's also kind of followed up in the spec as well, because this RS bike, while it's got Performance Elite Fox suspension front and rear and a 2.5 DHF up front, that's actually a 34 fork, not a 36 fork. So it's definitely the less sturdy, skinnier choice from Fox's two trail forks. And again, that's evident in the ride once you start pushing it into turns. I mean, The good news is that grip 2 damper, it's the older one, and it's an absolutely awesome damper in my opinion. Once you get it set up, just run the spring pressure a little softer than you might ordinarily, because it is a fork that sits on its damper. So maybe go down a weight category than Fox suggests on the tuning table, but in damper terms, this is a fork that thrives the harder you ride it. But it can't really be said about the chassis. So while it feels like the back end is really solid, when I'm trying to drive it through and out of sections like that, the front end has got a little more give, a little more wonder. Nice bike to push though, still. Definitely nice overall feel. However, while it's structurally smooth at the rear end, sorry for slowing down there, just checking the camera was on, that float shock on the rear is actually quite a soggy number in terms of mid-stroke support, so it's very comfy, but feels like it's blowing through its travel very easily. All right, mate, cheers. Thanks very much. So I'm having to kind of prop it up with quite a lot of pressure. Kind of the opposite of the fork. I'm propping it up on a lot of pressure. And then I'm also needing to use that pedal progression lever. All right, lads.
Hey, you all right, mate?
Cheers.
All snarly.
Thanks a lot. No worries. So it has got the kick there, but you know, quite soft in terms of the shock. And at first I thought it was actually quite a low anti-squat setup, but I think it is just that damper out back. Well, the good news is, you know, with that big front tyre and what is, you know, basically Fox factory suspension, just without the gold bits, you can get that damper set up nicely, you know, because it has got that 3-position shock lever overall, plus 3-position, God, don't know, don't look down at the camera while you're trying to ride uphill, guys. Plus it's got a little gate on the low speed as well, with 3 positions on. So there is a way to prop it up. Naturally, the damper and fork, sorry, the shock and fork aren't super well matched as it comes out the box. And it certainly feels nice and secure down the janky stuff like that. Not least because you've got that nice large volume maxis, and it's, you know, full spec as well. It's, you know, 3C, Max Terra, proper top of the range rubber. Then you got a dissector on the back for a little bit more roll. And And this RS gets you race space, 30mm rims as well. Just a little wheel. I mean, he's still on like unbranded hubs and plain gauge spokes, so it's not going to be too light as a wheel set, but certainly feels like a well-grounded bike overall. And in terms of the rest of the spec, you got SRAM GX, full transmission, so 1052, and they haven't done anything irritating like put a cheaper block on, so it's an XD style cassette with that 10 tooth smallest cob, but more importantly it's got the XD driver on the wheel, so you're not looking at a secret upgrade cost. And yeah, GX is fine, but how can I phrase this? Should SRAM come out with wired T-type transmission soon, then now this is the older conventional mount, so although this frame does have a UDH rear end, which we found is a major upgrade over the last time we saw that frame, this frame, as well as more standover, and hasn't got that little bridging pipe. They just looked a bit old on the old 140 bike. You're not getting that T-type rebuildability, toughness, you know, more secure, more accurate shift. But perhaps you would if you were to find that SRAM very shortly launched a wired transmission. Anyway, back to the Whyte GX SRAM G2 brakes. They're alright. It's the R, so it's just your basic reach adjust on there. 4-pot, standard rotors. Hasn't got the thicker, more powerful HS2 rotors, so they won't delay you. Oh, hello dear. Blimey. Bambi's having a Sunday morning graze. Ruining my pun about British railway infrastructure though. I was going to say, so they won't delay you as much as, so they'll delay you as much as the building programme on HS2. For real. So I think Bambi saved us all from a very poor dad joke. What else? Yeah, Whyte kit through the rest of it. What they call their drop it seat post. It's basically same as the P&W Rainer. So it's got a little bit of stroke adjust. So while that 450mm seat tube means it's not going to be mega long seat post compatible, this large comes as standard with a 170 stroke, but you can drop it down to 150 if you want. And as you can see, that 76, well, the whole geometry, especially that tight rear end, to be fair, feels good when you're just on that tighter, turnier stuff. Without really thinking about it, I was definitely taking more inside lines on that than I would with a slightly longer back end. And also, because of the switch it link, it's mullet compatible. So again, I mean, that's where this shock shines. It might not have the support mid-turn, but when you're slow speeding through just slap rocks like that, it does roll through. You know, it gives you more travel than a firm shock would give you, and more travel in that case. Oh. New shoes, anyone? I am having such a mare with this corner at the moment. The para the other week dabbed out 3 times on this turn. Must practice more. What was I saying before I binned it just then? I think it's something about how the shock gave you excellent traction, so you could crawl up over stuff easier. And then I failed to demonstrate that beautifully. However, pilot error aside, that is definitely the case. You know, it feels softer. It's kind of got that, you know, your tyre is a lower pressure than it actually is vibe to it. And in this higher setting, you've got reasonable crank clearance and the front end isn't too floppy. And while 76 is probably a moderate seat angle in terms of today's trail bikes, rather than extremely steep, then yeah, keeps you on point when you're pedaling in the saddle without having to nudge forward too much. Yeah, and it definitely, I think it has got a relatively low anti-squat by the feel of it, because it really is rock crawling up over here really smoothly, even if I deliberately slow my revs down. Almost feels like it's got a plus tire on the back, which again, you know, positive of that super fluid Fox shock. And also, while, you know, 15.5 kilos, 15.6, whatever it was, it isn't light. There's actually several carbon bikes I've tested in a similar range, like the Canyon Spectral, like the Merida 140, that are pretty much bang on the same weight, or certainly within a couple of 100 grams. And trail bike weight has just crept up steadily as bikes have become sturdier. I think that's one thing I should mention. Lifetime warranty against defects on this frame, as long as you register within 28 days, and lifetime bearing warranty as well. So although it's got very high spec bearings as standard, it's got loads of mud clearance, like I say, with a lack of stays. If you do wear the bearings out, just get in touch with your Whyte dealer and they'll swap them for you, or at least provide you with new ones to swap yourself. So, you know, the idea with that is it's a bike that's economical to own in the long term. And also some nice longevity features in terms of the fact it's got a rubber belly armour, it's got good wraparound armour on the chainstay as well, and obviously SRAM, you've got that clutch on the rear mech and those narrow wide teeth on the chainring, so that gives you good chain stability. Although GX is a relatively simple chain set, it's just, you know, solid cold forged, doesn't have that nice sort of cut out machined look of XO, but it does the job. And again, you know, things like white saddle's all right, and the white grips are actually really good. Quite big in volume, because Sam, their designer, they got big hands, but that's something I should say actually. A lot of the kinematic work for this bike was done by Sam, just riding the snot out of it during COVID, and then racing enduro on it. He actually won several UK enduros on the original T140 bike. Plus, it was also the basis for a lot of their suspension design work. The E-Lite 140 trail e-bikes as well. And like I say, well, in open, that shock does feel a bit baggy. Kind of feel saddle nose rising up. Everything tilts back and makes it just a little bit more difficult because seat angle slackens, effective reach shortens, front end becomes slacker and more prone to wander. If you pop it through that middle pedal mode on the shock lever, it sits on more low speed compression, so it kind of keeps its original poise. Just feels a lot more positive through the pedals and through turns. That's probably where I'd leave it. If you're a more aggressive rider, whether that's on descents or climbs, and then use that fully open as kind of ultimate comfort traction switch position.
And one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is what Whyte call the switch it link, which is basically a 2-position rear shock mount with a little brass insert, so you can drop that BB height by 8mm and change the angles, make it slacker by about 0.6 degrees. I think they say 0.7 on their website, but by my maths, 65.3 to 64.7 sounds more like 0.6. But anyway, I'm going to quibble over 0.1 of a degree. So I'm going to make that change. I mean, it's a bit awkward because the way the frame's arranged means, and the fact the bolt's at the top, not the bottom, means you have to pull the whole front end of the shock out to get to the link. So it's not like seconds, it's a few minutes job, but it also means you can use a mullet rear wheel with the chip in the high position, and that gives you roughly the same GO as a 29er rear wheel with the chip in the low position. God, you wouldn't believe how much traffic's gone past where I've tried to say that. So it's literally just a case of wiggling the shock out. Oh, right. Okay, it's one of them. Right, I'll put the camera down, get it sorted, and then get riding.
Right, so now we're in that lower position, which means 64.7 degree head angle and a pretty slammed 330mm BB, and I can already feel it's definitely hugging those turns better up the top there. It's got a little bit more sort of self-steer about that head angle. It just feels, you know, more gravity orientated. I'm happier letting it run, turning it in a bit dirtier, dropping my heels, staying off those brakes. Although, to be honest, these brakes are mild enough that it doesn't make a massive difference anyway. So hang on, let's punch it up the road for a second. And it actually hustle's all right still. And what we'll do is, as we drop into this, take a second, flick it into that firm shock mode, and all right, yeah, there we go. That's the kind of support it needs for this kind of stuff. And obviously it's Stainburn, so it's jankier than most, but heads up! Good lads.
That's it.
Always good to review your video footage at the bottom of a jump. Even I don't do that. But anyway, yeah, that's nice now. I feel like I'm sitting further in the back in the bike for sure, but it kind of feels good. Takes a little bit of pressure off that fork and front end, puts more into the part of the bike that can really deal with it. That back end, hey, there we go. And like I say, it doesn't feel soggy when you pedal now. You know, it rewards that kick and push. I mean, it's certainly still very fluid just because everything stays very tight and in line with that big yoke, I think, and the big bearings. But yeah, that's definitely your park setting, is that lower BB height. Just as a footnote on that lower BB position, as you'd expect, especially with this supple shock, meaning the dynamic ride height is lower than you might imagine, you do get noticeably more pedal contact, and also because you've got slacker seat tube and slacker head tube, there's more wander, so it's very much a gravity setting rather than a technical anti-gravity setting for techie climbs. So overall, this Whyte is a really good bike at a decent price, considering you get that Fox Performance Elite, and once you've got fork and damper dialed in, then it's a really good versatile ride, whether you want it super supple and soft for grip, or more pumped up for pushing berms and turns. However, I was a proper YouTuber at this point, I'd slap a big title on the video like, "Don't buy this bike," you know, all that clickbait rubbish. I'm not going to do that to you though, but what I am going to say is I wouldn't buy this bike because I think the cheaper one is going to be just as good, if not better, and that's a bike that's £1,000 less. That T140 standard bike, yes, because rather than Fox you get RockShox Pike Select, which perfectly good fork, stiffer than the 34, which would suit that hard driving back end, structurally better, I feel. Plus you get Select Plus rear shock, double plus good, which naturally is a more supportive, harder driving shock itself. So less fat with setup and a better, more balanced result, I would imagine. Plus you still get 12-speed Shimano Dior, which is a cracking group set, probably more durable in some ways and a smoother shift than SRAM GX. The only downside is you get slightly wooden slate brakes from Textro, but then these G2s aren't exactly, oh, nearly off the front, all time, and you're not getting T-type SRAM wired, if that happened to be a thing. So with that cheaper bike, you're not only getting basically the same functionality, if not better, but plus you're still getting all the things that matter about this Whyte, like the versatility, the brilliant geometry and the longevity, but with a spec that's arguably functionally better. Well, potentially, I've not ridden it, but I think I've got the experience to extrapolate it out, than this bike. And I think with less adjustment and less faff to get it into the sweet spot, I think that's going to suit the whole kind of affordable, tough, gravity switchable alloy frame vibe of this bike better than fancy suspension. But obviously, you know, the nice thing is you've got the choice. Oh, I forgot. Cheaper bike. Comes with the same spokes and hubs, but a pinned WTB rim. But frankly, you can tell the difference between that rim. It's probably a little bit heavier, but in the grand scheme of things, I'll be very impressed. You'll get serious princess in the P points if you can spot that in the actual ride quality. And I know nothing about being a P spotting princess, as you probably know by now. And it comes with the same tyres, whichever model you get. So still top end Maxxis even on the cheaper bike. But, you know, if you're the type of person who buys Calvin Klein pants because you want the label rather than George Asda, so you want that Fox, then, you know, this bike is an absolute bargain compared to something like, you know, Specialized stump jumper alloy, where I think it's 3,750 on the comp. And you don't even get Performance Elite, you get a rhythm fork and a performance rear shock, and you still get TRP brakes. So, sure, Whyte would be a lot happier, and the Whyte dealers would be a lot happier if you bought this bike. And in the grand scheme of things, it is still definitely a bargain.
So, there you go. Whyte T-140 RS. A really good, tough alloy trail all-rounder. And if you want Fox, it's an absolutely belting price as well. Plus you've got that versatility of mullet or change geometry, and you've got stuff like the lifetime warranty on the pivots. It's a really mud-proof bike. So while you haven't got things like, oh, and there's no internal headset routing, should have called out that before, really. No internal storage, mind, either. But, you know, I know which I'd rather not have than have, if you see what I mean. Anyway, I'll do a full tech talk round where hopefully I'll remember all these details at the appropriate point, rather than just adding them in piecemeal at the end. I think I need some lunch, to be brutally honest. But, although I think this is a great bike, and you certainly shouldn't be sad if you've bought it, if you're on a tighter financial budget, then I think the standard T140 is likely to be an absolutely outstanding bike for £1,000 less. And that's a lot of cash. So, thanks to Whyte for lending me for the bike to test. Thanks to you guys for watching. Massive thanks to my Patreon subscribers who pledge every month, and they really help keep the channel sustainable. So their names are scrolling up at the front. Massive thanks to my channel supporters as well. Make sure you click the like button. What else do you need to do? Subscribe, log on for notifications, and if you tune in tomorrow, Matteo from Met will be telling you about this nice new hat that I'm wearing. So there's your little Easter egg if you bothered to watch all the way to the end, because that's an exclusive and I might get into trouble for saying it. But anyway, I've been Guy Kestevan on Guy Kest TV talking about the brand new Whyte T140 RS, which isn't quite 140, but it is Whyte, and it's a right splendid bike. That's what RS stands for. So I'm sure it used to be RockShox, and that's got Fox. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed watching it, because I've thoroughly enjoyed riding it.